Good morning. First of all of you all coming to the corrections Judge B hearing this morning. And this morning, the intent of this meeting is to talk about those things that we have been successful in doing in some of our criminal justice reform, to show the partnership between public and private, how that partnership is working. We will also have individuals from MDOC, public sector, private sectors, those who are formerly incarcerated, those who are still incarcerated, who are taking advantage of this. We will also have a word from our parole board and Mr. Forrest Thigpen with Fort Mississippi. This meeting today will not be a rush meeting. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we cover everything that we think should be covered, to make sure if there's any questions that you may have, that we may be able to give you an answer for your questions and all of those things. So we will be here for a while today. We will break for lunch at somewhere around 12:15 and come back about 1 or 1:30 today and finish the meeting. And I know it's long, but this is something I feel that we shouldn't be in a hurry to rush through, because we understand that this is very important to us. It is, in some, it may not be as big as financial appropriations and all those things, but at the same time, we are talking about people's lives and helping them to change that. And I think that's important as well. So without any further ado, we're going to just make one slight change to the agenda that we do have before us today. And we're going to ask Sheriff Brian Bailey and the individual with him, we're going to ask them to come first. They will be the first presenters. And Sheriff Bailey, I will let you have the opportunity to come to the podium and present your individual however you feel like you need to do it at this time.
All right, is that better? Sorry. But I brought our jail administrator, and I got to brag on Captain Vaughn. I have no doubt the nicest, cleanest jail in the state of Mississippi, and I challenge anybody to come by for a visit, and we'll show you the whole atmosphere has changed, especially with programs like this being in place. I think it gives them hope. But Captain Vaughn has arranged for everyone to come today, employers and the ones participating in the program. So Captain Vaughn.
Good morning. So thank you all for meeting this morning. We have several business people from our county that utilize this program. Brent Robertson, you can come on, and Stiffy Boyd, and then Tommy. Tommy's the supervisor for the service manager at Bob Wood. Christopher Taylor, and then Tracy.
What we'd like to do is just have Mr. Robinson, he runs all the Genovina franchises in the metro area. Just like for you, and again, we have coached him, asked him to say things, but just get up here and speak from your heart about the program.
Absolutely. I think we can all say that the last couple of years have been very trying years in the restaurant business. We have Georgia Blue, Genovina's. We're up to 7 restaurants and stuff like that. And I can honestly say our restaurant in Brandon, had we not been involved with this trustee program, would not have reopened as fast as we had. And we would not have achieved the level of success that we had. We have trustees and nobody was really sure how this was going to work. And what's amazed me is now I walk into a restaurant and we just have new employees that we've hired. And it's not, hey, this is a trustee from across the street, or this is, it's just one big group that everybody's in there and they're dedicated and they're working toward a common goal. And we have had nothing but success. I'm the kind of guy that I would tell you honestly, if we had been burned at any point in time, but I can tell you, we've had nothing but success to the level of, I've got two young ladies. One started as a hostess, one started as a server. The one that started as a server is now a salaried manager for us. She has been released and chose to stay with us. She is a salaried manager for us. One of those young ladies we're considering for a general manager spot for our own store. The other one, she is actually what we call a key holder, which means that she runs shift at an hourly rate and does a fantastic job. Great work ethic, punctual. Just I could not ask for anything better from this group of young ladies and gentlemen that we have had the opportunity to partner with. The only thing that I can ask is, hey, I've got locations in Flowood, I've got locations in Madison, I've got locations in Starkville, I've got locations in Brookhaven, we've got one coming in South Haven, and I would not hesitate to partner with people like Senator Barnett, Sheriff Bailey, Christy, his wife. It has been an absolute godsend to us as a business, this partnership at this time. And so anything that we can do to support moving forward, Georgia Blue, Jenna Benna's, our restaurant groups would 100% support it in any way possible. Thank you for your time.
Y'all have any questions?
Is there any questions? Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Tracy, who actually works for Dickey's Barbecue, and it's just one of our female trustees. And if you would tell them how long you've been working, and if you don't mind, just let us know how much money you have saved up in the time that you've been working, and how much longer you have for your release.
Okay, my name is Tracy Cole. I'm currently employed at Dickey's Barbecue. I've been working since June, the end of June. I've saved up about $6,000. I get out in March, so I just have a little time left. I just want to say that this work program has really helped me build confidence and make me feel stable, that when I get out, I can succeed and I'm treated with respect and I feel needed when I go to work every day.
I've known the Boyd family for a long time. They have a dealership in Rankin County, and when this first started happening, I made one phone call to her, said, "Hey, I got a certified mechanic that's in this program." She said, "Yes." I made it. So would you just talk about the program?
My name is Tiffany Boyd West. I'm the dealer manager with Bob Boyd Honda in Brandon. And when Sheriff Bailey called, it was an automatic yes for us. We believe in second chances, and talent really comes in all shapes and forms. And with Chris, that was no exception. He's been an exceptional addition to our team. And I'll let Tommy speak on his skill level, but he has truly been a blessing for us. He's accountable. He's been a great addition to our team. We've had no issues. And honestly, he's helped our dealership grow. So we have our entire business model on exceptionalism, and he is exactly that. He's an exceptional employee. So Tommy is actually his direct supervisor. So I'll get Mr. Desper to get up here and speak a little bit more if you don't mind.
Hello, I'm Tommy Desper. I'm service manager at Bob Boyd Honda. Christopher came to work for us, I believe it was August of 21, summer of 21. During the middle for us with COVID, a very trying time with us staying open and trying to keep people working and keep people going. Like I say, when he came in, he really brought a lot to us. His efficiency and what he does, I mean, a little bit just him getting comfortable and getting used to the Honda and getting used to the equipment and tools and how to use and where to find the information and all these things. And, you know, once he got to that level, he's really one of my most efficient technicians. He does great work, don't have comebacks. Cares about the work he does. He's, like I say, he's helped the efficiency of my service department, especially through a very trying time and with COVID and personnel. And he's just continued to grow. I mean, he's been what I would want to put an example of every employee I have, to be honest with you. I mean, he's been that impressive. He's got a lot of skill. He had it when he came to us, you know, in his background, he had to have. And like I say, he used that and picked up on our vehicles and our system and our processes and applied them. And once he got comfortable with them, I have no problem. I would love to have him full-time every day, all day. Like I say, this has been, I think I said it earlier to Sheriff Bailey, it's been a big win for us. I don't have a single negative I can really point out anything since Christopher has been with us. It's all been positive. He's been the poster child employee for us, to be honest with you. Me doing something that, you know, 30-something years, this is what I've done. Seen a lot of mechanics, seen a lot of people, and Christopher would actually be up there in that top 10% of those people through the years as far as a quality person and a quality mechanic. Like I say, I'm just waiting for the day when I can get him full-time. Okay, and then maybe we can find another person that has the same kind of drive, same kind of want to, and give him an opportunity and continue. But I just want to thank Sheriff Bailey. Like I say, it's been a great help to us. There's been a few times, even through COVID, where, you know, look, I don't have any employees today, you know, kind of reached out to Sheriff Bailey and said, hey, look, you know, any way I could, you know, you could let Christopher give me a little help. He was flexible there and has done nothing but been helpful to try to keep us rolling with our business. So, but that's all I've got. If you've got any questions.
I actually love the program. If it wasn't for this program, man, I lived a crazy life. You know, my wife died in 2011, and I just took a turn for worse, a path of self-destruction. You know, I wound up here, you know, with nothing but a crazy life to go back to. Sheriff Bailey saw the good in me because I wanted to get my driver's license situated and straight. And I went out of my way to do it. He said, "You got me on it, Bob Boyd." And I hadn't looked back. I've been able to secure a house. I've been renting a house for almost a year now, determined to get out. And I've been able to save $38,000 while I'm in jail, incarcerated. Have a good start in life when I'm able to leave. So, other than that, I mean, I love my job. I took pride when I put this uniform on every day that I get to go to work. You know, I hear people complaining at work, you know, like, God, I'm ready to go home. I'm like, man, I don't want to go home. So, yeah, I'm the first one there, last one to leave. So, yeah. But I love my job, and I'm looking forward to going full time when I leave. So.
I'd like for everybody that came with us today in the program, please stand. And this is just a sample of the ones that are in the program. We have Jenna Bennett's, Dickey's, Summit Foods, Leonard's Metal Fabricators. Who am I missing? Co-op. So Rankin County, I tell you what, I have 10 times as many jobs available as I have participants that are able to go work in the program. And that's, y'all have a seat. That's pretty much all we have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions to Sheriff Bailey from any members of this committee?
Thank y'all very much. Appreciate you.
Now, Sheriff, before you have a seat and the rest of y'all, I just want to say thank you all for what you are doing. And the sheriff will tell you, you know, he and I started this together, but not together. We was on totally opposite ends of everything, but one thing that we did have in common, that was we agreed that we wanted to help people, and that's what brought us to this point. And I'm just proud to see that we have some private sector that also believes in giving individuals a second
Yes, sir,
chance.
definitely.
And that's been one of the toughest sales here in this legislative body is people willing or wanting to give individuals a second chance on life. And you all approve that if you give an individual a second chance on life, then most of them will turn their lives around. And this is just proof of it happening. And Sheriff, you and I have talked about it many times before. We believe that recidivism, we believe that it starts before they're ever let out of jail or prison.
Yes, sir, definitely.
We think that if we give those individuals an opportunity to work and earn a living and to demonstrate to us what they can do while they're inside, is when they walk out, we don't have to just give them $20 and a bus ticket and hope that they don't come back. We give them real money. We give them real jobs. We give them hope. We give them things that they haven't had before. And I think that's where true recidivism starts at. So Sheriff, I just want to say thank you, and to Boyes and to Jenna Benners and Georgia Blues and all of you all for what you have done. I really appreciate that. And thank you all so much for what you've done.
In return, sir, I cannot thank y'all for trusting us enough to give us a shot to try this, to show that it could work and everything. And I tell you, one big thing I think was out there is that they're gonna take jobs away from other people. Any of these people steal a job, but y'all, how many more openings do you have right now that you can't fill? They're not taking jobs from everybody, they're taking jobs people don't want, and they'll take it in a heartbeat. And again, thank y'all for believing in this, and I'm telling y'all, this will change lives, letting them out with some money in their pocket. The average one leaving has around $10,000 in their savings account when they leave the jail. Life changing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I want to ask, Mr. Bradley Long with MDOC, if you would, please come to the podium.
I want to commend Sheriff Bailey because he's the pioneer, and Senator, you're the pioneer for allowing this to happen and to pass this legislation and let him be the pilot. And so we followed along behind, and we feel like ours is pretty successful, and this is really the true reentry because these folks are not going to be recidivating at nearly the same rate. We would look for that to be not even in the teens, but in the single digits for those that have a job when they get out and pay their fines and fees. And Bradley's going to give us a report here on the money and so forth. So Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to have this hearing today. I think it's vital, as important as it is to create the structure. It's also vital for the public to hear about what is happening and the positive changes that are being made, not only at the county level with folks like Sheriff Bailey, but certainly at MDOC. And so I'll say that in the short time, this law went into effect July 1st. And so in the short time, the short window that we've had, I could not be more pleased with the success we've had at our work release program. We are finally, over the last month or so, at full capacity, which is what you guys, as part of the bill that was passed last year, allotted us to get to 25 individuals. And And so we're finally there. We've got 3 of those individuals here today. I've also got 3 mayors. And then I've got a statement from one of our private sector partners, Old River Volvo, who is the large Volvo dealership in the Jackson Metro that sells and works on 18-wheelers. But I want to make mention of this as part of the larger conversation. One of the reasons it was important for me to have 3 mayors here today is because I think if you talk to any mayor across the state of Mississippi, one of the main issues they're going to say is they have a public works problem. They have issues with fixing things in their municipalities. And so while we are partnering with private sector employers, we also want to recognize the reality that there are needs across our state as it relates to public works and to maintenance and to what cities and counties need. And so one of the things in our conversation has been, they need those individuals because they are just having a hard time finding the people to come to work. And so knowing that they have a dedicated pipeline has been vitally important. I want to read a statement quickly from the president of Old River, Forrest White. He sent this to me today in lieu of him not being able to be here. When we found out there was an option to participate in MDOC's pilot work release program, we jumped at the opportunity because we knew that having a dedicated labor pool would be a major boost to our staffing needs. We have 5 participants hired on as diesel technicians, and we hope to bring them on full-time at the conclusion of their sentence. These workers have been excellent employees fitting right into our company's culture. Old River is a strong supporter of this program, and we believe more employers can and will benefit from its future growth. He called me about 2 weeks ago and said, "Hey, this is a shot in the dark, but is there any way that you can help me with my Louisiana stores? Because it's been so important for them in filling in the gap of diesel technicians at their facility here in Richland." And so with that, I'm gonna bring Clint Stevens up. Clint, come on up, buddy. Clint's been working there. How long have you been working at Old River? Since October, all right? And I'm gonna let him just kind of make a statement about how it's going.
It's really going good. They're training me to be a certified diesel technician. I didn't have no experience. I had car mechanic experience when I went in, but they're training me. The work over there is great. I love it. They started me out at $15 an hour. Just started in October. I've got close to $3,000 saved up in my savings account. Got all my fines and court costs and everything already paid off. And it's just really great opportunity for me to be able to know I have hope, have a one step out, with money saved up for financial means and possibly a job long-term.
And Clint, what is the top wage that I know when they came in, they brought him in, I think $15 an hour. So we started out at $15 an hour as a diesel tech, learning the skill, but I think you can graduate up to maybe $27 or $28 an hour. Is that right?
Once you get certified, you can make anywhere from $30 to $50 an hour.
Okay. And the point of that is, look, these are not, we're talking about opportunities that can lead to a lifetime of sustainability. And that's why that's important. Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
All right, next, I'm going to bring up Mayor Gary Rhodes. Flowood is newer to our program. In fact, I think they went through several interviews in this past week, but I just wanted him to be here to speak to how important this partnership is to Flowood.
Thank you, Brad. I wanted to speak to this committee. I think this is probably, I hadn't been in office for 33 years, but I think this is probably some of the most important legislation that's ever came out of this Capitol, because you're dealing with human beings versus financial troubles and all that. So I'm a second chance guy. The only difference between me and some of the people that we got working in this program, I didn't get caught and they did. And that's the way I've always lived my life, and believe that we all are subject to second chances. And just the magnitude of this bill and what you're turning and changing lives instead of giving up on people speaks very highly for this Senate committee. And I want to thank you. If it wasn't for the DOC ladies that we've been using for years and years, and we provide them, a meal, we have to pick them up and watch, but they're an asset to the city of Flowood that's unbelievable. And I know this program's going to be even more so. But, at the end of the day, I thank the good Lord that we all are accountable to, not taxpayers, not voters or anything else. I think you're doing the right thing. And I think it's one of the leading legislative pieces that I've ever seen come out of this place in 33 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm also going to bring up Mayor Butch Lee, and Mayor Lee was one of the first participants. And in fact, if you, I'll make a plug for Mayor Lee. He may say this as well, but if you drove through the lights at the city of Brandon at the quarry, a lot of that was done with folks that are part of this program. So we're very thankful for the partnership with Mayor Lee.
Absolutely. I want to regurgitate everything Mayor Rhodes said. I need to tell you, you're affecting people's lives. And in this particular case that Bradley mentioned, we did a drive-through Christmas light program. I've got 8 men out there working right now. They began in October. It took us almost a month to set this up, and I was out there working shoulder to shoulder with them at night, on weekend. We're not like the private sector. You know, sometimes water and sewer and streets and roads and all that kind of stuff goes on 24/7. So on holidays and weekends, those guys, just like was made a statement earlier, I don't want to go home. Well, these guys don't want to go home. They want to work. We've had 2 people that left on parole. One was a pipe fitter, went back down to the coast to Gulfport. He was able to go home with money, hadn't seen his children in quite a while. I was able to buy Christmas for him, and his probation officer's already got him working, and now he's back to work full time. So good outcomes, and we need more good outcomes. So I know there are going to be stumbling blocks along the way, and I would encourage you just to look at those and learn from those, but we need to add to, not take away from this program. So very much appreciate that. We're not only using those, Bradley, in that Christmas light program we did, but I've got them working in public works with street department. I've exposed them to concrete, electrical, streets, asphalt, you name it. We were able to divide our forces up and make other teams that go around and do all the jobs that the municipality needs to do. So it's greatly enhanced our ability to deliver services to our residents, and much appreciate that. So please keep up the good work.
And those jobs he's talking about, most of our jobs at our municipalities are paying right at $12 an hour. So, you know, these are well above the federal minimum wage, good jobs that can lead to long-term careers working for places like the city of Brandon and Flowood and Pearl. I'm gonna bring up Mayor Wyndham, who has several guys as well.
Thank you, Bradley, and to the Senate committee as well as the chairman. I have with me Harry Smith and Stephen Fitzgerald this morning. And, you know, once Karen and Bradley came to me about this program, I spent 16 years in law enforcement working for Pearl PD and also the Attorney General's office. So I've seen on a repeated basis where people would get out of prison. They would be on West Capitol. Just like the chairman said, you had $20 in your hand, and then they would end up going commit a crime because they have a lack of resources. In one particular case that I worked, this gentleman had just gotten out of prison, has been in prison for 30 years. And he had no other way but to commit a crime because he didn't have the resources. And I thought to myself, when we were entering this program, how much of an impact could we make on other lives throughout the years where they didn't have to go back to prison? This guy ended up going back to prison for the rest of his life. And so I stand before you today echoing sentiments that Mayor Lee and Mayor Rhodes, some great legislation. And quite frankly, I think that it's part of doing the Lord's work here, giving people second chances and letting them move forward. But these 2 gentlemen in particular, I want to make sure that I highlight them. I was talking to our public works director yesterday, Shane Burrell, and he said, Stephen and Harry have come in and made a tremendous impact. So they're outworking some of the other guys that have been there. And what that does to the other gentlemen there, they realize, hey, I don't need to take advantage or take advantage of what I have. Look at these gentlemen in this work program coming, working along beside me, which raises spirits and morale. But we hope to continue this program. I hope that this committee will certainly want to provide future growth. And I think that it's going to be a major impact for workforce throughout the state of Mississippi. But these 2 guys, again, I can't say enough about their attitude, and they're willing to work and come along beside our people in public works, because just like what Butch was talking about over here, public works is a construction company. There's so many variables involved that you have to be able to do, and it never shuts off. Police and fire are one thing, but our public works guys have to get in the trenches, and these guys are getting out there doing some manual labor and really making a show of themselves. So thank you again for having us here today and allowing us to speak, and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you guys for having us here. I can't even begin to tell you all the amazing things it's doing right now. First and foremost, it's keeping us from coming out behind the 8 ball. We're coming out ahead, having a little money in our pocket. All the skills I'm learning, it feels like every week we're doing something new. I'm learning drive machinery, literally everything. I don't even know where to begin to start, but just the advantage this has and being around normal people, being out in the real world, the cultural difference, seeing people who've done this for a long time and the life they can have and the amazing benefits has been a real blessing for me. And that's what I'm taking away from it.
My name is Harry Smith, and this program has been very positive and inspiring. It's been one of the best chapters of my life to, have a second chance. I'm thankful for it, and being able to work with the city and these guys, Civilized, it helps me just be inspired and know that when I reach society, it'll be better than what it was having a chance.
Yeah, and I want to echo those sentiments. At the end of the day, the same thing that Sheriff Bailey said, the same thing that all of our mayors here have said, the reality of this program is that it should provide hope, that there is a pathway to a better life, and that the life that they lead when they leave our facilities is better than the life that they came in with. So that's what we are about, is putting them in a position to change that, because frankly, there's so many people that are incarcerated behind the walls of our prisons that never knew what hope was before they came to us. And so if this program can do that and also put them in a position where they have economic sustainability, we're creating something that can ultimately be not only a cost savings to the state, but a win-win for our communities across the state of Mississippi. One thing I want to address quickly, I've got a kind of our totals, and we've been ramping this program up since the law took effect in July, really at full capacity over the last couple of months. Our gross pay in our program so far has been $85,782.61. Taxes collected have been $12,142.34. Net pay, $73,000. Amount in savings for each of our participants as a total is $37,383. Amount to debit cards, which is part of the percentage that they get, that they have access to, is $10,668 spread amongst 25 individuals. They've paid off $17,939 in fees that go back to our counties. That's a big number. And so we really feel like just in the short time that we've had the opportunity to really get this off the ground, that not only are things going well from the structural components of it, but we're seeing the benefits and we're seeing the financial numbers play out. And, I think when we look back over a 12-month period, we're going to see that there's some really big numbers going to pay off fines and fees, a lot of taxes being collected. And so ultimately putting these guys in a position where they can be sustainable as they get out. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Bradley, and thank the mayors for coming as well. Two of you all I remember from my mayoral days. So it's good to see you all again here at the Capitol. But I do have a question for the mayors, and that is that these individuals who are working for you now, have you all made any preparations to bring them on permanently when they are released? And I don't have to hear from only one of you all want to just give a statement about how you feel about it going forward as to bringing them on full time, and how do you explain it to your citizens that these individuals who are working or incarcerated but are good people to be out in society working now? So can one of y'all answer that question for me? You gonna take the junior man, huh?
Well, yeah, the junior mayor here, I would say, and I think Gary and Butch are along the same lines. Everybody in this room or people understand second chances and the theme that we have going on today. I think from the standpoint of our citizenry and also of our aldermen, I think that they are right in line with what y'all's thought process is in order to put people back to work and give people hope. Going along with that each and every day and providing that for people and then being a part of that. So the biggest part of the reason that we're involved is because we want to help people. And I think if we articulate that to our citizens, I don't think they're going to have an issue with that, because they themselves are going to see what we're trying to do. And I think they're going to applaud the program, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had to ask that question because, you know, when we have these conversations here in the Capitol, and you know, the question is always asked, or some are always suggested, well, we shouldn't just let these people out because, you know, it's always a scare tactic. Are they gonna come back to your community? They gonna come back and they gonna do this, and they gonna come back and they gonna do that. But we see that that's not always the case. I mean, you know, we know that we know it's not gonna be a perfect situation. We know that there's gonna be one or two somewhere that's gonna always do something that, you know, we don't like. But I don't think that we should hold the other 99 hostage for that one or two. And I'm just glad that you all are here today to share that with this body. Because, you know, we don't always need a way of scared individuals to not want to give people a second chance. And I think that we have the wrong idea too when we talk about being tough on crime. A lot of individuals think that when we're being tough on crime is that we lock an individual up for decades and throw away the key and never let them out. But if you got an individual that has been incarcerated and you don't do anything and they get to go back, I mean, that's what they're used to. So you're not being tough on that individual by putting them back in an environment that they're comfortable with. I think my idea of being tough on crime is introducing individuals to things that's going to change their life, change their pattern, change the way they did anything. It's tough to come from a life of crime, I'm sure, to now come to where you're a successful individual. In my opinion, that's where we need to be tough on crime, is introducing them to things that they're uncomfortable with. And these young men who are here now who have found themselves before being incarcerated and now talking about the things that they are learning. And I'm sure that was a tough thing to do, but they overcame that. In my opinion, that's how we have to be tough on crime. But thank you all, mayors, and thank you all for what you all are doing. I wish that was available when I was the mayor. It definitely would have helped in a lot of instances where we were short on manpower and couldn't find anybody to work then. So I know it's even more so that way now. But again, thank you all, and to the young men, both who have came and the young lady who came up with the sheriff. Thank you all for participating in the program, for wanting to change your life, and we appreciate that. We wish you all nothing but success going forward. Again, if we can help in any way, please let us know. And we, you know, Mayor, again, thank you all for what you do, and encourage others if you can, you know, to. And that's what it's about. It's about actually changing lives. And May, I appreciate what you said earlier, and that is that, you know, we all are guilty. We just didn't get caught. So thank you. Brad, I think there's Senator Sparks, you had a question as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bradley, I guess would be for you or the commissioner, either one. As far as the program, tell me a little bit, or tell the committee a little bit about the selection process. Obviously, these gentlemen and ladies have been successful in it, but kind of how does MDOC approach this of who we're selecting?
Let me address that if you would. The way we did the selection process was Warden Chambers played a major role in vetting the inmates to see who would qualify based on the statute you passed and that who would fit into the program. So CMCF played a major role, as would all our wardens, as the program expands to do that. And the main thing we need to do now, and that we're doing now, is calculating exactly what this program costs, all the expenses to get them to work, to get them back, all the details in the program, and then also to develop rules and regulations for how they operate, how they live, and so forth. So it's going to take a little while to get you the data you need so you can go forward to make any other changes to this legislation. So we hope to continue as we are this year, and then maybe next year we can expand it and we'll have the rules and regulations, know the costs, so then you all can maybe do legislation to expand it more next year. So only 2 months we've been in it. We actually started 2.5 months, didn't fill it up until 2 months ago, staying full now, but those inmates are coming from CMCF, following the way that you had in the legislation. So it's working well that way. So anyway, that's my comments, and any questions anybody has, Bradley, whatever, ask them.
Let me add to that. So by statute, there are some requirements to get into the program. One of those is that they can not have been charged with an escape or any sex crime coming into incarceration. So what we have established is a protocol under the direction of Superintendent Chambers at CMCF, where we have one particular building, F building, there at CMCF that houses those who fit within a certain, we call it our transitional work community. It's got our VSET and some vocational training and things like that. But all of those are minimum custody. They come through and they go through a 4-member panel that goes through their history and through their, their entire history of what they came in on, all the things they've done while they've been incarcerated. And then that is signed off on by Superintendent Chambers. And so at this point, we have a waiting list of individuals who are ready to come into the program. As we matriculate out those who leave our custody, we'll add directly back from that group. So we're trying to create a very a foolproof system that can be also transferred to other places at whatever time in the future that occurs.
Well, and that was my question, I think, is that what ability we have to replicate. Obviously, CMCF is centralized, but we have 15 regionals that we utilize. We have other state facilities, and it sounds like you've got a pretty good vetting process that you identify people. Then it sounds like you're housing folks, and then you're taking the best of the best to choose to go into the program. But you expect to bring back data maybe that we can consider next year to look at opportunities in other areas.
Right. My goal is for us to have this is the blueprint. These are the people that need to lead it in this area, and here's exactly what you have to do, so that all rules, regulations, policies, procedures, everything fundamentally that we do from A to Z is in one place, and we don't have to go try to figure out how to create and replicate something that we've already done, that it's just there and we can put it in place immediately.
I know with Sheriff Bailey and the program that they put together over the years, just separate and apart from what we're doing at DOC, but we have had sheriffs inquire about the ability to replicate that. So we appreciate the work you're doing, and obviously would appreciate any best practices that we can put together to be successful on all sides, because I know the mayors and leaders and elected officials have that concern, as well as our folks that are working there. They want the program to be viewed in a manner that it sounds like they're vetted before they ever get to go to work, and then they go to work and they do a good job. Then that ought to mean something when they come for the parole board.
Right.
It ought to mean something when they come before the parole board. That's the goal here, is that we identify people who do not want to comply, and we have a Department of Corrections, and we have identified people who desire to do better, and we have a Department of Corrections. Some people accept that, some people reject that, but I appreciate people's willingness to be corrected. It's my dad's birthday today. I wished him a happy birthday. Ain't nobody corrected me more than my dad, and sometimes swiftly. But that's what I hope we're doing, and I appreciate what you guys have put
Let me
together.
add to that. Sheriff Bailey, his program was in place a year before this program, and a lot of what we're doing was mirrored off of the successes he had. And so we've used him as a resource. Obviously, you're talking about those who are in county jail versus those who are at the Department of Corrections, but there are some similarities. And so we've used him as a resource. I know our staff calls some of his staff occasionally, even down to a conversation that we were having earlier about security and how you treat those who are in work release versus those in a close custody situation. So there's all of those nuances that take place that are part of the process to ensure that we're providing a good program and a program that's promoting what we say it's promoting, which is hope and opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Angela Hill, you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a question and just a comment. This is for the commissioner. Commissioner, I'm not going to make a speech. I'm going to get down to the nuts and bolts and say that I always appreciate the fact that you are so responsive to do what's needed to be done when we run into a problem. We want people to succeed when they get cut loose, but I wanted to just, while you're here and everybody else is here, just to make the point that we still have people being released from MDOC, and when they're released, they have no ID, no birth certificate, no ID. I've had everybody's family's touched by somebody that's incarcerated. I've had two in the last year that have gotten released and have contacted me and said, look, I've got released. I don't have an ID. I don't have a birth certificate. Don't have any way to get an ID to even go try to get a job. So we need to make sure that if they're cut loose with an ID so that they can get some kind of job and they don't have to call their senator to call, show them where vital records is, how to get a birth certificate. Because I've had to go through all that with two people. And also a second thing is most people that are incarcerated that have families or divorced or whatever, they're going to be delinquent on child support because if they're incarcerated, if they were behind to start with, they're certainly going to be behind now, and they get their license suspended if they're behind on child support. I have a bill in drafting that gives a provisional driver's license to folks who are behind on child support to go to work and to go to church. So we're handicapping these people by not giving them the ability to drive back and forth to work or to be able to drive if they get a job that requires some kind of driving. So I just wanted to continue to make the point, and I know DHS may disagree with me, but I've done the research. I've looked at NCSL. There are other states that are giving license to people that are behind on child support, and apparently they're not losing their federal funds. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention and see if there's some way that we can all work together and make sure that we can get these people a driver's license when they get out and that they do not come out of MDOC without an ID.
Thank you so much. We're working there now, and so we do have the provisional driver's license. And when Mr. Belk testifies, he'll talk about when they pass through his board. We have a deputy commissioner that's assigned specifically to do driver's license, to do birth certificate, do social security, and have everything they need so they can be employable and get out and go. You're right on track.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that you know that it's still not happening because you're not always told what's going on here and there and yonder. So I just wanted to make the point that we may have it all in place, but it's still not happening.
I know, we're missing some and we're dealing with that, but we have the thing in place, so we're trying to get there and get everyone that goes before Mr. Belk to have that ready to go. So that's not the reason he has to set them off, we need to bid.
Well, I appreciate that so much. And it was, maybe a year or so ago that I was trying to help somebody get a driver's license and had a very difficult time trying to help them get a driver's license to go to work. So I appreciate the fact that y'all are saying my bill's not needed. Maybe we passed it already and that slipped my mind, but I know that I worked really, really hard trying to get somebody a license not too long ago.
No, it didn't slip your mind because it's been happening right up until now. And so we just now got all of it in place, working with Commissioner Tyndall. So we just right now.
So do we need to change the statute? No?
I think not right now. We have it worked out.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you
Thank
a
you.
lot.
What I would like to say to that as well, Senator Hill, is that when we passed the bill and the governor signed it into law, that was one reason where we had language in the bill that so these individuals could use some of their monies that they're currently being paid to pay down on their fines and fees. And we thought that was important because when the individual leaves, just like this one young man that said that he's already paid his court fines and fees. That's something he don't have to worry about when he leaves. He's already saved money. And if he or she, if they do owe child support, now they have some type of financial means to help them to start paying that down when they leave. That may be something that we may have to go back and look at if we did not include child support in there. But we want to make it possible that when these individuals do leave, that they leave as debt-free as they can, with the job in hand and a life before them. That's something that's what I've always pushed here again. And I can see right now that it's beginning to work. And what makes me feel good about this is that, Mississippi, when we get down on anything, we're always number 52 or 53. We're the lowest of the lowest on a lot of numbers that we get. We're always considered the lowest. Our grade is always the lowest, but this here, I think we can call ourselves the first in the country to ever implement this type of legislation that gives individuals what we are really talking about. We can say that we've been the first on this. I haven't seen any other state that has actually taken on this to this magnitude to make sure that we truly give individuals a second chance on life. And that's because, again, we have partnered with public and private. But I do have a question for Bradley, and that is that going forward or right now, have you all decided or you are working with any of the other advocates that are out in the community that's also trying to do work or help people find jobs or to reduce our recidivism and those type of things? How are we tying those individuals back to the legislation that we have so that we can make sure that we're getting as many people involved in this as we possibly can?
Yeah, I'll just say that it's no surprise that often we operate in silos, not just in this world, but in a lot of what we do as a state. And so one of the things that we have focused on, I've got a couple of folks on my staff, Karen King and Dante Jones, that are here, outreach to those nonprofits and groups that are advocating for the same things and providing resources to this population group has been a key element of the things that we've done. And so I think as we go forward, we should, as a state, see more cohesion as it relates to support for those who are, returning citizens as they're coming out of our incarceration through connecting those nonprofits and other groups back to some of the things that we're doing here.
Thank you. Senator Ingram, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question for Bradley. When you first started talking today, did I understand you said that we have 25 individuals participating?
Maybe 24 today, just because somebody rolled out, I think, a day or two ago. So we've got interviews going on for that 25th participant, but we are fully staffed at this point.
Okay, so 25, that's going to be the cap of, and those are inmates, the 25 inmates that are out working. Okay, what's the reason for that cap? Is that in our bill or is that in the law? Okay.
It's capped at 25. And I think that followed the Rankin County bill at the time as well.
Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you. This is my first time to sit in on a corrections meeting. I think this is a great, Mr. Chairman, I think this some really great things that are going on here. And so I wanted to question that to see if, maybe in the future, we need to increase that and get it rolling. I know we're early in the stages of that, but appreciate all the work everybody's doing, inmates and the private and public sector folks on this. This has been very eye-opening. I know we're early on in a long committee meeting here, but I appreciate everything y'all are doing.
Well, we are early on in this process, and we certainly are still building a lot of these things. We're seeing the successes, but we're building it. But I will say that as we go forward, I don't know that our labor problems are going to fix themselves. So I think the need is going to continue to be out there to expand and see, for opportunity for this population to have that chance.
Bradley, I know that there's been several of the individuals who have taken advantage of this program have talked about their savings. But could you share with this committee and share with those others in attendance today exactly or explain to them how that is possible and the institution that was part of helping with that, and just to make sure that you let them know that in no way that any of the monies that is earned by these individuals are controlled by the state.
That's a great point, Chairman, and something that when we started this process, we wanted to make sure that it was absolutely airtight and that nobody could come to us and say, this is happening or that's happening, or, money is mismanaged or it's not being put in the proper place. And so what we did is, one, we allowed the guys to actually open up their own savings account with Bank Plus, is that right? I think it's Bank Plus. And that was mirrored again after some of the things that Sheriff Bailey had done, but they have their own savings account that they are signers on, right? And so we have a payroll company that as we make the payment to them, the payroll company knows how to split that paycheck up into the proper buckets by statute. So the money is never seen at any time except on paper by our staff or anybody that's overseeing this program. It's going into the various buckets And the fines and fees are put in a trust account and then paid out of that trust account. So at any time, at no time would there be any opportunity for any type of, impropriety or anything like that. It's always covered, and we made sure we had the checks and balances in place going into that, knowing that that would be certainly an issue and something to talk about.
Thank you, Bradley. Does anyone else have any more questions for Bradley, the commissioner? I'm sorry, Senator Hill, yes.
I just have a quick follow-up on what you were talking about, that Mississippi's typically on the bottom and last when it comes to statistics. We have to make sure that we do everything that we can to try to keep people out of jail to start with. Just want to make it clear that Mississippi, during 2013, we passed what was called the third grade reading gate. And when I was in the classroom, there was too many kids in my class that couldn't read. And so Mississippi is not on the bottom anymore. That pipeline will be severed because we've gone from dead last from 49th to 50th just in a few years to 35th in nationwide reading proficiency on the National Assessment of Education Progress. So this body is looking to prevent somebody from becoming incarcerated by giving them the tools. If a kid can read, they're less likely to drop out of school. They're less likely to be in prison. The New York Times has done 3 or 4 articles about the Mississippi Miracle. So we don't always get the positive press about what we as a body have done. You only hear the negative, but we are doing a lot of things to try to change the things that you're wanting to change in Mississippi. And, if you adjusted for the poverty and the demographic data to put us alongside a state like Massachusetts, if you would adjust for that, and the statisticians have adjusted, we would likely be in the top 10. So I just wanted to let my colleagues know that.
Thank you for that, Senator Hill, and I agree with you 100%. My comment though was not that we'll last in everything, just most things we'll last in. And we are climbing out of that hole. And I'm glad to see that we can see some of the things and some of the things that we think are important in helping individuals. We're not here to just open the floodgates up and let everyone out. But we know that there are some good people who made a one-time bad mistake and landed in the place that they are. And I just think it's incumbent upon us to let these people know that, hey, we're willing to give you a second chance, and understand that a lot of people who find themselves that way never had anybody to believe in them. And for a person to know that my legislature believes in me, I think that's what most of them need to know, is just somebody believes in me. But again, thank you all for coming today and sharing with us, how successful this program has been. And we know that we do have a long way to go on this. But again, thank you. Senator.
Oh, it's McCon.
McCon, I'm sorry.
So I've got a question there, Bradley, about the relationships with some of these folks that are out there that are trying to help tutor individuals, to help them get their GEDs. I know that y'all have a lot of relationships, and I know COVID kind of really shut that down a little bit. I got several calls from some ladies groups, I believe some Catholic churches that had come in and were working with some of the ladies that were in MDOC custody to try and help them, get their GEDs out of the way, help with life skills. Are we still working with those kind of groups to be sure these people are prepared? We've got some great success stories right here of people that were working, but just say those that were not working, that are still in the system, who were trying to get their GED or get their life skills. Do we have those back in the institutions to help with that kind of stuff? Are we not? Are we even looking at that again? Because I think that's a very crucial point. As you go back out into society, the life skills matter.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I'm pointing to the commissioner because some of the decisions from COVID were before my time, and particular groups that have come in to help. Certainly we have some groups that are coming in, and absolutely life skills, things like Smart Start and Work Keys and GED, all of these things are part of a holistic environment and culture that leads to opportunity. Excuse me, but particularly as far as from a policy standpoint, who is and who is not coming back in, I'm not 100% certain that's something the commissioner could speak to as it relates to particular groups.
And even further with that question, what happened was there were some that had gotten to a certain level and then they never got their credit. So then I got called back in. You know, to be honest with you, I did not really get too deep with that. But I do think as long as you can tell me there's an open line of communication to try to figure some of that out, I'm good with that.
Absolutely. And I will say that in changing providers specifically on the GED, one of the things that we looked at was the fact that there's some folks that got lost in the changeover where they had not completed the GED program, but when the changeover took place, they didn't match up, those ends didn't match up. So we're trying to fix that in particular cases right now.
Let me comment on the GED thing to you. We've asked the Senate, we asked the legislature to increase our from 6 million to 7 million, the amount of spending authority we have from the inmate welfare fund, because we are now paying inmates to do work for us as far as teachers and so forth. And that's coming to about $1 million this year, because if they have jobs and they're working and making money, so that's good. But where I'm going is the teachers, inmate teachers are what we use to get GEDs. So we've gone through our population and looked at everybody a year short, and everyone a year short. We're working hard to get them the skills and trades, but particularly GEDs. And for instance, you mentioned women. At Delta, there's 37 women who do not have a GED that's going to get out this year. We know at CMCF, we have then 182. And so those women, we're focusing on the GEDs 100% right now as we speak to get GEDs for them. So everybody that gets out of our prison at least has a GED if they academically can do it. And so we're focusing on exactly what you're saying, because that's giving them, they can get jobs in better, but also to have a skill in trade. And the teachers are the other inmates, and that's inmates with longer sentences. And so that's the ones, for instance, if you're an inmate GED teacher, you get 30 cents an hour, and that's $52 a month. So that gives you independence to go to the canteen and buy stuff and don't have to fall into gang stuff and extortion and all that. So by paying that money to them, then they have it to spend. And so that's good. They have worth. So then they have a purpose. So everybody then prison settles down, less violent. And that's what you're seeing now. Our violence is way down and we're not having a problem. For instance, we went through the holidays with really no problems. We had hardly anything to speak of. So that's because they're busy people. And that's why these programs work too. And that's why the community here is working really hard. The work release is going to be successful. We have to critique it more, and it'll take us a little while longer to get all the policies and procedures. For instance, the work release does not work out of one of our prisons. We don't want them to come back in because they'll be forced to bring contraband back into prison. So it needs to be a separate place, a separate building. And so as we expand to other sheriffs, other jails and so forth, we want to be sure that everybody's operating under the same rules and the same procedures. And so that's why MDOC needs to take the role of overseeing it to see that everybody is following it and doing exactly like Bradley said with the money and so forth. But that's how this works. So we're really on board now with our skills and trades, and our skills and trades teachers are also the inmates who have that skill and trade. And so that's how we save dollars for Department of Corrections. You couldn't afford to hire all the teachers that we need.
And Commissioner, I agree, and I think that we were just kind of looking at two different areas there. I appreciate that you've got you're working within your system. You've got the people that are staying. I guess my question was more about, I know that there are volunteer groups that come in, and from those life skills they were bringing in. Notably, I've got a cousin that was part of one of those through one of the Catholic churches. That was their women's mission, and they would come in and work with the ladies to be sure that they were providing, how to write a check, how to have a bank account that would balance and things like that. That's really where I was focused on, was whether we had those people back in or not.
We do have those coming back in, and we need all the help we can get. So when we have the community that wants to come work and do, whatever, then we want them to come. And so we have volunteers that come in from the community. We welcome that, encourage it.
Senator Fillingham, you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman Barnett, and I apologize for just getting here. We've been in the meetings with Lieutenant Governor's office for a little bit, but I did have a question about recidivism. I know over the past few years, even preceding your tenure at the Department of Corrections, we had started working in the criminal justice reform space, as we call it, trying to implement programs that help people to transition back into society in a successful way. And I'm just curious, over maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever you have numbers for, can you tell us what the population is and then what the recidivism rate is? And do you see a positive trajectory on what's going on? If so, great. If not, maybe you can tell us how we could try to fix that.
Yes, I left my numbers over here, but anyway, the population is exactly where it was before COVID. We dropped down from almost, is it here now? Anyway, it's about 19,700 or so today. And so it's stable there, and we expect it not to hope go up a lot more because we have about 600 beds available. And so we have about 200 beds for women available, 250. So we can handle the population we anticipate coming in. As he paroled and as we release about 5,000 to 6,000 a year. So we're bringing in about 7,000 a year now. So it's kind of gained ground on us, but not a lot. That's kind of where we stand. I'm just putting that out of my head. I'm close.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are you seeing any of the programs that we've been talking about this morning? I guess have they just not been in effect long enough to show a return on the investment yet?
The recidivism rate has been consistently about 34, 35% up through 2020. And I don't know now, our programs are just now starting to get into action. And this program here, this is going to reduce recidivism drastically. Those skills and trades job we have inmates in, and paying the inmates to work is going to give them a little money when they get out. And so these things will reduce recidivism. And I look to see it, I hope in the 20s, pretty shortly, pretty quick, next year, 2 years, not next year, but maybe 2 to 3 years. We can maybe get to there, because that's going to slow the intake. And that's going to leave us with enough capacity to sustain ourselves in the future. So that's where we hope to be. And that's why we haven't proposed any new prisons or anything like that. We think we can hang it right up and just cut right at the top and make it.
So historically, over the past few years, you're telling us that the recidivism rate has been around 30%?
Yeah, I had my numbers I have was 35, I think, 0.9, the last numbers we had, which was consistent for the last few years.
And in your experience, even before Mississippi and Louisiana or other places, is that something that you see as typical, or is that high or low, or what do you rank that as?
It's probably about average for the country, but we're going to get below that because these programs work. We knew they worked. We did that in Louisiana. That's why we quickly got right into inmate teachers and inmate skills and trades, because it reduces recidivism when they have a job and they get out. Otherwise, they get out with no money. They're going to have to rob somebody for a grub stake. How do they live? If you get $20 or $30, you have no money. You hardly can go back home. Your wife don't want you to come back because you're going to be a burden on her. But when these guys are making money and they get out and they have $2,000 or $3,000 in their account, they're welcome. Come on back. You're going to have to be a breadwinner. You're not going to be a drag on us. So then families stay together better. It's better at visiting. Then you just change the whole culture of prison, and you be what it's supposed to be. Correct deviant behavior is what corrections mean. So then you really do your job. And that's what Mississippi is doing. And that's what our goal is for Mississippi, to be the flagship in this and be out in front, because most states don't do what we do. No one does the inmate teachers except in Louisiana. And that was small. That was at Angola, basically, because the others didn't hardly do it. But we knew it worked. The research proved it, because we have evidence-based research from Baylor that all this stuff works. So that's why we can hang our hat on it. And you have people already trying to come and do more research with us. I mentioned that before, Pepperdine and Baylor again. And you also have people want to come see the inmate teachers because they didn't think it would work. It would be corrupting the other inmates, but it does work. People have work. These guys have work. They want to change their lives. And they have big, strong moral programs to change the morality of themselves so that they won't be out and See, a criminal is selfish. He takes, he's a taker. That's what he does. He's about himself, selfishness. And so bully. And so you break that cycle with morality. That's wrong to be that way. You shouldn't, you should think of others. You should give back. So when they can teach another inmate a skill or trade or GED, then they feel good with themselves, and that is their own rehabilitation. So then you change the culture of the prison, and that's what we're seeing now. That's why our violence is down. And so in Walnut Grove made a big difference. And I commend the governor for giving us Walnut Grove because we had to have it to go with the gang folks. There's only about 300 there now. And all those aren't gangs. There's 80 of them that's in A&D programs. So it's pretty good. So your whole system is working, and that's good. And it's going to be better next year and better the next.
So the goal, I mean, obviously the goal is zero recidivism, but if everything works very well that you're implementing, what would a successful recidivism rate be in the next 2-3 years?
The next 2 or 3 years. Let's try to be at 29 or 30. Let's try to be there in the next 2 to 3 years. But we got to do better because everybody that comes back leaves a victim. And so that's really where we are. And it costs the community, it costs the sheriff, it costs the jail. Crime costs a lot of money. Obviously, look at our budget. And so look at just the medical budget. So as we fix all this, medical included, and we have a better environment and we're building another church. We have the money set aside for one at Parchment. It's coming up. The one at CMCF is just about completed for the women there. So that's the moral component. The seminary at Parchment has 99 students in it. The one at CMCF has 30. So these are the moral mentors. These are long-term inmates with long sentences. So they go in to start their little churches, and we don't care what, when, or where, moral programs. So this is how you really change the culture of MDOC, because then they spread out and go to all the other prisoners, all the other prisons. For instance, there's 5 field ministers at SMCI. There's about 10 at CMCF. And so these guys are your moral people that go around to prevent suicide and watch and sit on someone who's threatened to kill himself. You put one of these guys there for 4 hours and they swap out. So that saves their staff and cuts your costs. So those are things that get them involved in their own incarceration. So they take ownership of it and we change the culture of our prison.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Commissioner Kane. Is there any questions from this body to Commissioner Kane? If not, I'm going to ask if we can break here for lunch. Come back about 1:15, and I promise we're going to try. I know the agenda said 3 o'clock, but we're going to try to be done somewhere around 2 o'clock today. So at this time, we're going to pause for lunch and be back about 1:05. Well, Daniel, I'm gonna tell you like a guy told me. Thank you all for returning for the second part of this corrections and can you get down on the volume, son? Thank you all for coming back for the second part of corrections and Judge B hearing today. I know we left during lunch in the middle of questions being asked to MDOC, and we wanted to pick up where we left off with a few more questions to MDOC. Will be followed up then by questions from to the parole chairman, followed by Mr. Forrest Digby, and will close us out. We're going to try to be done here at least by 2 o'clock. So this one may be just a little bit faster than the first one was, but without, nevertheless, it won't be without being as serious as the first one was either. So, Mr. Lum, is the commissioner around? Because I'm sure there'll be a question or two that we want him to answer as well. No, Senate Vice Chairman Sparks has some questions for MDOC at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. This earlier today, there was a subcommittee meeting related to appropriations from MDOC, and we've talked a lot about the goal of recidivism reduction. We've talked about the work programs that we have going, and I like to see that. The concern I have, and of course, we're going to talk to the parole board chairman here shortly, but we have a limited amount of financial resources in this state to operate government. We have allocated a lot of those resources to the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections has a limited number of resources, facilities, beds, staffing, et cetera. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of where we are as we're trying to manage the population that we have? I know you've mentioned briefly that apparently we've reopened Delta, which is a facility that we were not using, and then we've moved some other people around. Can you kind of give us an overview of where we are from a population standpoint?
Good, thank you. And we opened another unit at Parchman, and each one of those is about 160 beds. And so our backup bed is Walnut Grove, because if we got in a real bind, we only have 200, almost 300 there now. But see, its capacity, its single cell is 750, double cell would be 1,500, which we don't want a double cell, and we don't want to rush into Walnut Grove because it has to control the gangs. And that's where the violence went away, because if you get caught with a kid and a weapon, you go there and you don't come back. So then we've called everybody to not be using shanks and all this kind of stuff, because they don't want to go to Walnut Grove because they're gone. And they don't get to live good as far as all the things you have in other prisons. And so it turns out being a disciplinary unit, but it is a backup and it does have beds, so we can go there. So we're not in a real bind for beds now that we took care of the women by going to Delta, because it holds 600 and 720 is 950. So therefore we have plenty of room for women with those two. So we're fixed up with beds, but the cost is going to be where we have to hire the correctional officers. And so when we see what happens this next weekend, when we go really blitz and we're going out at 1935. And there's a good thing about the way we're paying them. Personnel board was good. Now here's how this works. This is 10% above our regular rate, which is 17 something. Anyway, it's 1935 with that 10%. But if you miss your shift and you don't go to work, we deduct that 10% for that shift. So you lose the money. So it would cost you at 1935, it'd cost you about $21 for you to miss your work. That's what it'll deduct from your check. So they're not gonna get to keep the last 10% unless they actually show up for work. And that would encourage reduced absenteeism. So that's gonna be the cost. If we staff up like we're supposed to be at that rate, we're gonna spend a lot of money. But the whole deal is, all these things we're doing is pushing the Justice Department back, because honestly, they're leaving us alone pretty good. And so we just settled the Amos lawsuit, and we just settled the Jay-Z lawsuit. So those are good, and they're gonna go to Parkman. I mentioned that earlier for Friday, because they want to do a documentary, because Jay-Z is gonna claim credit that the way Parchman looks now, it looks really cleaned up and really good. Well, he'll claim credit that he did it, but we don't care. That's just the nature of the beast. But anyway, he wants to do his video to settle, then we had to agree to that. So that's cool, they're behind us. So we're getting out of the so-called gar hole by spending the money we're spending, and you're saving us from being like Alabama and getting into that, we think, getting into that tremendous amount of money where they make us build new prisons and all that. The other good thing is all the construction we've done. When I came here and when Kerry and Jay came, all our maintenance people would call contractors. Every time something broke, no matter what, little old small stuff, call a contractor. Now we forbid contractors. We do not call any contractor. We do this ourselves. All these repairs at Parchment, we fixed. Delta, we redid it. We had to reboot it over to women, getting rid of all the urinals and doing commodes, you know, because, and we did it. We paid for it. We bought the material, but we did all the work. So we're saving a lot of money by doing everything ourselves, because that is reentry, because doing ourselves, they're learning skills and trades. And on that line, we just bought the 3 concrete trucks with grant money for $15,000 a piece. They're used. They're sitting at Parchment, got there this week. And so that's our concrete school and how to do CDL driving concrete trucks, because the industry told us they will hire everybody we can train if we can teach them to drive the concrete truck. So this is good, but now we can pour our own concrete and do our own work. So therefore, that's going to save us a lot of money. So if we spend your money, we're trying to save your money everywhere we can. That's good, but we're spending your money to keep justice away from us, and they see us do it, and it's really pretty much working.
And I appreciate it. And I know that you've got pressures there. I don't know that we have a list of demands or a list of requirements, because I don't think they've reached that point yet, but you're trying to anticipate that. But as it relates to capacity, we've converted Delta to a women's only facility. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay, so we have excess room as it related to if we had female inmates. But what do we have in the rest of the system? What is our capacity? Because we've moved from 16,600, 800 to 19,000. I believe you said 700. That's my concern, because there's statutory guidance out there that we enter into an emergency situation once we reach a percentage of capacity. So as we set today, what's MDOC's capacity? And it sounds like women is not the issue. So I guess I would say for everybody else.
Well, see, men are the issue. And this is what's good. Let's go through it a little bit here. We had Unit 3 at SMCI was closed because of sewer water. Okay, you gave us ARPA money. And so therefore, now they took the restriction off because they see we're repairing it. So we start filling Unit 3. That was 400 beds. So we gained 400 there. So then we're sitting here with, we could say 700 at Walnut Grove if we had to have them. That's 1,100. And so then we go back to Parchment, and we picked up 2 zones there, which was 2 of the 166 people. We're sitting here today at 19,174. That's where we are today. We claim our capacity of 2177, but we don't like claiming that because that's not just right true. And so we have to get our own numbers correct. So we're good with that 19,174 because Mr. Belk and I are gonna meet again this week, and we're working on getting, we won't let anybody not, he was setting off for 6 months if he didn't have an address. Now he's setting off until we get the address, if we don't have it. But then we're committed to get everything they had to have, but he don't set anybody off very much, and that's really reduced. So he's emptying us out better. So that's a good thing. Pro Board's working close, and we'll meet again. We just set it up today next coming week to talk about releasing gang people. Because we want to we can release the gang people that are soldiers. We can't release the gang people that are the warlord, but they never get write-ups and they're all clean. So we're going to identify those for him. He won't release them, but he'll let the soldiers start going some. That's not really the problem. So it's getting him, working with him with the Pro Board, and he's real easy to work with because he sees the problem too. We're okay with beds. We know for another year. But you see, we have to be okay for beds longer because you couldn't build a prison. So therefore, you have to look further down the road. So in looking down the road, we think we're going to make this curve and we're going to dodge the bullet and not have to have other prisons unless justice rules that we just can't stay in all apartment anymore. Now, the unit 17, the death row apartment, it has 50-something cells in it. So it's going to come online and we're going back to the old death row. We like it better. It's a better cell block than the pod we have, and the inmates want to be by themselves over there. And so we'll open that, and we hope to open that by July. So we moved death row back to there. So it's just utilizing everything we have and make everything work. We're really okay right now.
We have approximately 21,000 in change beds, and we have 19,000.
We got 21,000 beds.
Thank you.
We do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioners. There any other questions to Commissioner Kane from this body?
Okay.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Belt?
Get my old man glasses on here real quick.
Thank you, Chairman Belk, for coming over.
All right, yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to come speak to y'all. I will start out, I think the Commissioner, Bradley Lum, and them had kind of hit the nail on the heads and a few of your questions there. The parole board, when we have our hearings and look at folks, one of the major pieces of the puzzle is, what have you done to set yourself up for success? What programs, opportunities, job force development things have you taken advantage of to set yourself up for success if you're granted parole? Commissioner and I have alluded to the fact too, we probably meet 2-3 times a week, or not week, 2-3 times a month face to face and discuss a lot of these challenges and stuff. A lot of the folks, MDOC is moving from incarceration to rehabilitation. There's a lot of good efforts going on, but then there's a lot of folks that are stuck in the middle. A lot of folks, when they come before us, they have not, these opportunities are out there. They haven't taken advantage of it. So those are the folks that are probably be set off and, given the opportunity to take some. Through some of the discussions we've had with y'all, MDOC, and these programs are put in place. The Commissioner and I were sitting talking one day, we're talking about the fact that, the pre-screening, they've made quite a few advances in that to make sure that the right people were put in these programs. Sex offenders, the violent offenders that weren't supposed to be in were not put in. So the credibility of these programs is real high right now. We talked before about the fact that, a lot of people historically that went through a A&D program at MDOC was kind of a rubber stamp or a participation trophy. But they've changed that culture and that attitude. The A&D program at Walnut Grove has a lot of credibility, is doing folks a lot of good. Bradley Lum and I've had a lot of discussions, and as well as George King, around these programs and stuff. They're not rubber stamping folks to these programs, and they're doing a lot of good. So one of the decisions the commissioner I made about fourth quarter last year is we got to looking at this stuff, and we said, basically what you're doing by screening them, putting the nonviolent offenders in these programs, giving them the opportunity to set themselves up for success, is you're basically doing presumptive parole. We talked about this last time. Presumptive parole has been on the books for a while, but it really was not effectively being utilized, if I take the words from the peer report correctly. But what we decided to do is structure everything and put it in the format, it may not be perfect, of presumptive parole. So if these folks up front are screened, put in these programs, take advantage of these programs, and come before the parole board, we now have a mechanism to go back through, look at their case file. I think Senator Hill made a comment a while ago, earlier before lunch, that there's folks that are getting paroled that don't have a driver's license, they don't have a social security card, their birth certificate. Well, that is part of the programs they're putting together in these program files that the parole board will now be seeing, that we can make sure they have these things in place or have gotten them. They have taken the anger management, they've taken the GED, they have their HVAC certificate, they've gotten their welding certification. By the time they get through these programs and come to us, they should be to where they have set themselves up for success and parolable. And that's what we're working for to start doing in April. We've got a lot of the infrastructure things. The commissioner has gone back through. We're trying to make sure the processes are standardized so that when they start doing these programs at multiple locations, we're not seeing different formats of paperwork that come before us. Things are streamlined. One of the things too that I kind of noticed last year, you would think when you sit down to a parole hearing that you'd have a nice file on each inmate, everything else. Well, the most we were getting was probably an action sheet with their name, information on it, and here's our decision we made. We were having to spend a lot of time trying to go into offender track ourselves, learn the system, hunt and peck, and find that. There is a process in place to do a parole summary on each inmate, but it was not as robust as it should have been. So Jay Mallett, Grace Fisher and I and some others have been working together to make a more robust parole summary sheet that when someone comes before the parole board, we should have no need to go into offender track and hunt and peck. We should be able to find out up front that their eligibility has been confirmed. They are eligible for parole right now. They do have a parole address. They are either a violent, nonviolent, or capital offender. Here are some of their current charges they're incarcerated for. Are they RVR free, or here are some of their RVRs? Do you have community opposition? Do you have an advocate letter in the file? Do you have a victim statement in the file? Do the DAs, the judges, do they object to your release, or are they in support of your release? Goes back through, have the proper notifications gone out to the victims, and we're able to find the victim and give them a chance to give their feedback to the parole board. So by the time we have these hearings, hopefully in April, it may not be perfect by then. We should have a more robust system and everything else. And if people have taken advantage of these opportunities that they're affording them now, I think you're going to see a lot more people parolable. I'll throw that out there. I know we're kind of a question and answer type thing, but I just want to kind of give you an update on what we're working towards this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question in regards to those individuals who are coming up for parole. I know, I've been over to some parole hearings and stuff, and I've often hear, that this person has an RVR, but are y'all requiring MDOC now to give you more detailed information in regards to their RVR? Because I do know that, an individual could get an RVR just waking up today and not feeling like making his bed up. And the reason why I asked that is because, if we're going to truly set someone off for RVR, then I just want it to be more detailed than he or she didn't feel like making the bed up today, or they didn't have the locker or something. So,
perfect example, this morning we reviewed a case. We had an individual we had set off in end of December, end of November. Did not have an address. The only reason we did not parole them was because of the address. And we went back in, we had confirmation they had an approved address today. We went back through and we paroled them. But one of the things that jumped out is they had an RVR for basically like you were just talking about. I think they refused to close their cell door or something there, or exit the cell in a timely manner. We didn't put too much weight to that. And a matter of fact, that RVR was in place at the first hearing when we set them off, and it didn't carry any weight as far as seriousness. So we do review those. Sometimes they may just have a code in there, RVR B7. We might have to get something out and translate it or go back deeper into offender track to find what that was. The time of a hearing is, in my opinion, is not the time to be digging through that. So these summaries I've talked about, the dockets go out who's parole eligible 4 months in advance. We've got basically 3 months ahead of the hearing to do what you just said. Go back through, look, here's the number of current RVRs, and here are the seriousness of them, or here's the actual RVRs that they were. So we can glance at that, make a decision.
Are you all also working with MDOC to speed up the process for these individuals who are coming before you that do not have a residence? I mean, are you all working to fix that? Because I do know that a great deal of the people who we're looking at the numbers rise is because we're setting them off for not having a residence. So how are y'all working to fix that problem?
Yeah, so when that situation occurs, and the only reason we set them off is because of the address for 6 months, we are actually at the end of that week. You know, we have the hearings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Thursday afternoon, after we had those hearings, we're actually sending those individuals, their names and MDOC numbers, over to Pedro over there at MDOC, and they are pursuing and chasing to get that address in the system. We also have Kay Washington there that's in the parole board office that's in charge of the parole certificates. She's also kind of helping us mine those too, and she's having contact with other individuals.
But then we talked about this before, but wouldn't it be better if you had that information? If these individuals, you know, if you don't have a complete file before it gets to you, then why should these people even be eligible or come to you for the possibility of being paroled and knowing that they're going to be denied for the fact that they don't have a housing or they don't have an address?
So I guess my take on that is, you know, we're committed to give a fair and timely parole hearing to everybody. They may not like the outcome, but we're dedicated to that. The legislation reads that they shall have their parole hearing the month before they're eligible. So if someone is eligible in March, has a March 15th parole eligibility date, we're obligated to see them sometime in February. And so it's a shall have the hearing. So at the hearing, if they don't have the address, then, you know, that's our option of either you cannot parole them without the approved address. So, but they must have the hearing too. Now you could, at their request, reschedule, or if they have an attorney, there's a little bit of flexibility to reschedule. But I don't think it's at my discretion of saying, you get a hearing, you don't, because that's just a stage of an individual that I might not want to have a hearing, just never has one.
I understand that, but don't you think that has the appearance of, we're going to let you have the possibility of going up for parole, but being that you don't have a house or being an address, then you're going to be denied.
Well, double-edged sword too. So, you know, legally we can't parole them without the address, but they should have. If they wanted to get paroled, they should. A lot of times you find that they might be at a county or regional facility that does not have an assigned caseworker, and they've given that address multiple times, maybe to the wrong person. We had one the other day, they had given it to the caseworker several times, and she just happened to be in the hearing, so we called around on it. Within 2 or 3 hours, that address was in the system when we were able to take care of it. But yeah, I understand your question, but it's, you know, we're obligated to have that hearing. We're obligated not to parole them if they don't have the address. So we're trying to mitigate it by the short set off and notifying people that this needs some attention. If we have the dockets go out the 4 months in advance, start these more robust summaries, and that summary says what is their parole address and is it in the system, you've got that advanced mechanism now to work on to make sure when it comes before the board, the likelihood of them having an address has been taken care of. That's one of the reasons we wanted to, you know, beef up that summary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for members of this committee if I asked too many questions to take it up too much of your time, but if there's anyone else with this committee that has any questions for, all the hands start going up. Senator Sewer, I think I saw you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bell, appreciate you being here today. I might get into something I don't know if anybody else wants to get into or not, but you know, over the summer, we had lots of calls about Mr. Bell and him being paroled. You know, two-time convicted murderer. And I was curious about what you said a second ago. Basically said, what have you done to set yourself up for success? And so that really made me think about Mr. Bell and his case. And would you tell us a little bit about that situation, about him being paroled? And then I guess we had a little issue and then ultimately ended up being denied parole.
So offline, I'll tell you anything you want to know about it. Right now, I'll probably limit my comments around that just because of some of the confidential information about his file and this and that.
And I don't want to get
But-
any.
So let's just put it this way. So generically, when someone comes before the parole board and they have taken it upon themselves to realize that they did not want to be that individual that got themselves incarcerated and keep living that life anymore. And they take it upon themselves to make the necessary changes, to educate themselves, to change, to get a, because of the theological doctrine degree and then go online with Ole Miss and almost get their college degree online and make these efforts to not be that person anymore. Then you're going to see, I guess, that same philosophy of what have you done to set yourself up for success and, you know, be successful when you get out. Now, I understand that was a little high profile, everything else, but, you know, it's almost the poster child for what you're supposed to do to change and take advantage of. And that's why I think the parole consideration even came up to begin with.
And now, I'm an attorney. I've worked as a prosecutor, I've worked as a judge, and I am a criminal defense attorney. And going back to your comments, you know, that case just seemed like he had barely met the time frame on when he was eligible for parole. Yet we still have a large percentage of nonviolent offenders who are being set off or denied parole for you know, I know there's various reasons that we might not know publicly, but it just seems to me that it's a concern of mine and to a lot of my communities that, you know, this guy was originally set for parole, but we do have nonviolent offenders that have served well over the minimal amount of time that they had to be eligible for parole, and for whatever reason are not being paroled. You know, because we get lots of calls from constituents, their families, you know, grandmothers, mothers, parents that, you know, why is my son not being let out, my daughter not being let out? And we've got this guy who's been convicted of murder, served in one state, and now he's in Mississippi, just barely served his time. And, you know, so that is a big concern that, you know, is affecting me. And I feel like a few others around here have the same concerns also.
And that's understandable. Like I say, if you want to meet with me, we can have a more in-depth conversation around it.
Senator Wiggins.
Thank you. Just a comment real quick. I'm not wading into that Bell thing, but what I found out is people in this state do not understand that murder, you're eligible for parole. It's been that way for 75 years. Murder is defined as life. That's been the sentence for 75 years, which means 65 or 10 years, whichever is longer. So people think that because you get convicted of murder, you're not eligible for parole. If you get convicted of capital murder, you're not eligible for parole. So I don't know how many, I would ask that people go back and read the law and understand that. Okay, so my question is, and I'm going to give a scenario because this has been, let me say this, I agree what it sounds like y'all are trying to do, which is own your own release. Do something to show the parole board that you have been rehabilitated, understanding that MDOC has a big role to play. But to expect, you're not required to parole somebody. You're giving them a chance if they've done that. So I understand that. My question on this is a scenario that I hear quite often, and I've looked at this. So I know there's a constituent who he pled guilty to a offense. I think it was possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. Okay. doing the calculations, he pled to a year. Okay, he did a 5-year sentence with 1 year to serve. Okay, then meaning that he's eligible for a 25% out. So he reaches that. And what I'm hearing is he's never been given parole, and they're telling him, we don't know. They don't know. They don't know. And so calls keep coming to my office and to other people's office. They won't tell me why I was denied parole. Because when he pled guilty, he understood, and defense attorneys will tell you, with the 25 and 50%, they tell their clients, if you plead guilty to this, you're eligible for parole with 25%. So what's happening is they reach the 25% and then they're not hearing anything, or they're being told, I reached my parole eligibility date and I'm still in jail. Can you tell me, based on what's going on, what you think is happening in those scenarios? Because I've heard it more than once.
I guess a couple of things too. The 25% is a parole eligible date. But there is some miscommunication that goes on all the time that people here are told that is your parole date. You will be paroled at 25%. So there's a misconception there. It is a parole eligibility date to come before the parole board and have your case or your file reviewed. So based on that, that's why we're trying to beef up, who's been through programs, case files, other history, and do a more robust case summary. But if you go back in, look in the system, and they've got RVRs, or you look at their past history, that they've had other prior local county arrests, convictions, different things. Look at their history, you find out that, the possession of a weapon is more than just a possession. It is a shootout in the middle of the yard where you've shot into the neighbors' houses and actually hit 2 or 3 people in the process of discharging your weapon. So there's a lot of behind the scenes details that come at light that you say, is this person parolable? What have they done to change? And they set themselves up? And they get set off for a year.
So is the parole board, when you're making that analysis, are you going behind the sentence to look at, when you say history, like their whole history? Go ahead.
Part of the process, the parole board is able to look at your entire history, your even a sealed juvenile history, your prior, run-ins with the law at the local level, out of state. So there's basically an NCIC hit that's done and all that information there based on, your prior behaviors that can be considered during a parole hearing. So the circumstances around why you were revoked and put back in the first place for whatever violation was in place.
Well, in the scenario I'm talking about, there was no revocation. It was straight, they hit 25%. But what you're saying, they hit 25%, meaning they're eligible for parole, meaning they're not even eligible up until they serve 25%, which, by the way, as I think the law in this state used to be that people were eligible for parole to get out in a day. The legislature passed 25%, so now they have to serve 25%. Okay, so
and sometimes for your first time nonviolent offenders that get like a 2-year sentence, I think during the last hearing, we had this scenario, somebody comes to MDOC, gets moved in from the regional facility. They go through intake, get assessed, they determine they need a GED, drug treatment, and then they immediately are available, eligible for parole because that's a 25% mark as soon as they walk in the door.
So I guess to put it, and you're helping me. So if it's a, let's just say I'm using a number here. Let's say it's 10-year sentence on a nonviolent offense. That means they're eligible for parole in 2.5 years. Okay, they reach the 2.5 years, then you still have basically 7.5 years for them to do what needs to be done to be granted parole. Is that how you're looking at it?
So no.
Okay.
In that scenario, at the 2.5-year mark, when they come before us, during that 2.5 years, what have you done to set yourself up for success? You know, it was identified back when you went through intake that you didn't have a GED. So you've sat around for 2.5 years and haven't bothered to get your GED, but during your parole hearing, you're going to tell me as soon as you get released, you're going to go get it. You know, so
Okay.
have you taken advantage of
I
these
got you.
programs? You know, you were offered to go to CMCF and get a welding certificate, but here's the paperwork that says you refused to do it and turned it down.
Okay.
You know, so that comes into play and says, you
That's
know,
what
during
you're
that 2.5 years, what did you do? So that when you get out, you're not going to come right back again, or you're going to be able to go out, get the job, become the productive citizen. I think to answer Senator Hill's question from earlier, it kind of bridges back to what I said a minute ago. If we get these robust summaries in place, part of that equation of what have you done to set yourself up for success, these programs are bending over backwards to help you get your identification card, a driver's license, your social security card, a copy of your birth certificate, and everything that you would need that Senator Hill was talking about earlier that would help you get a job when you get out, in addition to that welding certificate you just got. But if you got the welding certificate and don't have this other stuff, Ingalls isn't gonna hire you. You're
Okay,
back
and
on the street trying to go about your old ways.
So it sounds like it's safe to say that under the prior iteration of the parole board, that maybe that all wasn't done, which is but now y'all are doing it,
We're
which,
doing a more
which is
thorough review of each
Right.
case on its own merits.
and because you're applying what the law grants you, that may be setting off things and allowing and getting them to do that, that maybe before that wasn't happening. Is that right? So we're trying to do the rehabilitation that MDOC and the parole board was originally set up to do. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and Commissioner and I have had this conversation before too. There should be no reason why, when we have a parole hearing, that the parole board should have to go in and hunt and peck for information. So one of the things, fortunately, with the relationship we've got going in the communication and identifying things, if we get these robust summaries in place and we're actually getting these case files from Bradley and from George King and those groups that we will have in front of us during the hearing and be able to see what they've, you know, they've gotten the A&D certificate, they got the anger management they were required to, they have met these obligations and taken advantage of.
Okay.
A lot of times last year, there were times you got absolutely no information about an individual. You may find out 6 months later that, you know, well, wait a minute, you know, you didn't parole me, but I have all these certificates. Then the question comes in, well, were those certificates rubber stamped or they're actually credible? I think we've put together a credible and more robust system so the parole board has the information they need at hand to make a better informed decision about whether someone set themselves up for success.
Okay.
And that's what we're striving for, the fair, timely hearing, and
Thank you, Commissioner.
make sure they're productive citizens when they get out, address their recidivism and all that stuff. So.
And we are about to run out of time here. Senator England has a question that he wanted to ask. And after Senator England's question there, I asked if there are any other committee members that may have a question. We may have to hold that question because I do have Mr. Forrest Dickpen here. And we want to hear from him, and we have to be out of here like 2:15. So if we run out of time, then we will have to probably have to see you after this to ask those questions that we need. Senator England?
Yeah, Commissioner Belt, thanks for being here today, taking our questions. Before I ask a question, I think when we were talking earlier about addresses for parolees, I think the law allows for transitional housing.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly. Okay. If someone is a presumptive parolee, will they be released on their set parole date with a hearing, or is there not a hearing in that instance?
So a lot of that legislation is clear as mud, and I think that was one of the kind
Okay.
of comments from peer report that said, you know, we weren't effectively utilizing it. When I met with them, so what do you mean by that? They said, you know, basically, nobody can tell us what it is. So we're going to take it upon ourselves to meet the spirit of it. But to answer your question, if they're a, you know, nonviolent offender, go through these programs, his intent was for it to come all the way through if they had achieved what they were supposed to during these programs. There's I guess 4 reasons for having them to have a parole hearing. One was if there was community objections. You get some DAs get our list and send the objection to everybody. And then the parole board has a sign off on their release plan and case plan. And there's multiple checkoffs on that case plan as it progresses through the system. So basically, if the parole board is having to sign off on their release plan, I mean, in all reality, that's a hearing. But it's a less formal hearing. If they've done what they're supposed to do, we sign it off and they go in the parole file. I mean, there's no formal hearing, but there is that sign off to validate that they have that in place and it is robust enough to meet the spirit and be paroled. Now, if they're not, if someone comes before us and they've had a year to go through A&D and get their GED, and they're one section away from completing their GED when they come up because they've either struggled with it or hadn't had time to, that's when you make the decision. Do we go ahead and parole them and hope they finish it when they get out, or do we set them off for a year or 6 months to let them complete that as a condition of their case plan to complete it and then come back before us with that taken care of before they leave, since they were so close? It's more than likely when they get out, they wouldn't complete it. So long answer, but technically no hearing, but there is a sign off, and that is really a hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, okay, Senator Hill, you have a question?
Just a brief question. You know, when the peer report came out, that basically where they looked at, I don't know how many case files, and most every one of them was either inaccurate, incomplete, or both. And that's what y'all are having to look at when you're trying to determine whether or not you're going to parole somebody once they reach the eligibility. It sounds to me like that y'all are working more closely together to actually have a robust, you know, background of their whole entire dealings from the time they got in the system to the time to where you're seeing them. My question is, based on the legislation that was passed through this body, some of us voted for it, some didn't. Do you all need more people on the parole board because you're having to look at so many more cases of eligibility than you were prior to last year? Do we need to add members to the parole board so that y'all can split these cases up and more adequately take the time that you need, rather than feeling like you're so crunched to, you know, look at X number of cases while you're being castigated in the media for not paroling enough people? So I'm willing to increase the parole board if it will make for a better, more efficient system to where y'all have more time to look at each case. Because like you said, some of these cases are serious cases. And I don't want your job. I truly do not. But that's my legitimate ask is, you know, can the number of people that you have adequately evaluate these cases, or do we need to split the workload up and add some more people to the parole board?
So the answer to your question is, I don't think the number of parole board members needs to be increased. I think if there was an increase, it needs to be in the support staff that is putting together the information that the parole board has to review, because then you're able to operate a little bit more quickly and efficiently if you have that in a timely manner in advance of the hearings and you have the right information. So I think it's more of a, if there was an increase, it would be more in support staff rather than the parole board itself, because we're meeting 3 days a week to have hearings, and then we got 2 extra days that we have.
So would
time.
you say one more person, 2 more people? What would you suggest?
At least 2.
2 more people to help prepare these case files and get everything in order for you to consider the cases. Okay, I think that's.
Or to have more accurate and timely.
To have more,
information.
I agree. And I think that's a very legitimate ask. And I think that, you know, we want these people to be successful when they get out, and we want to protect the public safety. And we need to do everything that we can to make sure that happens. And I think that's a pretty small ask for y'all to have more accurate information in front of you and prevent some things from happening that have happened in the past where y'all did not have adequate information. So I appreciate the answer, and I think we can work toward that.
And so not to prolong, but just to build on that too, when I first got over there, I was scratching my head why we didn't have a full-time attorney assigned to the parole board. And the commissioner and Kerry McDonald have been over backwards. And as of October, I do have a full-time attorney over there now because we saw a day-to-day need for questions.
Well, you need a
answers, things that
full-time
come
attorney.
up. And so we did have that one increase that helped in some of this accuracy and being able to make timely decisions and getting quick answers to questions or concerns we had during a hearing. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Belt. Thank you all for your questions.
Okay.
And I hope that, you know, the information that we got from here today will help us to further this process along and make it a better process for all of us. Again, thank you for coming and answering our questions. We'll finish this with Mr. Forrest Digby coming with the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've got this down to about 3 minutes. I've been scratching away. Each question that was asked, I'd scratch away another paragraph. You have in front of you a report that Empower Mississippi, where I work now, produced on violent crime. There are a number of statistics in there. I won't bore you with a lot of those, but I will mention just a few that are the highlights. And then if you have questions, we can talk about that after the meeting, I guess. Mississippi now has the highest incarceration rate in the country. We've always been in the top few, but now we're at the top. When the parole reform bill was passed a couple of years ago, some people were saying, well, this is just you're just wanting to open the doors up and let everybody out. And the fact is there are now more people in prison than there were when that law was passed. Some of that is because of the parole board reduction in the approvals that I think is just a temporary lull. I think we'll see that pick back up based on what the chairman has said. But also one fascinating statistic is that of the people who were admitted to Mississippi prisons last year, 2/3 of them were for nonviolent crimes. Only 1/3 that were admitted were for violent crimes. And the overall percentage is about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I think it was about 18% of the people in prison were there for nonviolent, but that's risen to where it's about 25% almost now. So what that seems to indicate, along with the fact that the clearance rate, which means that there's been an arrest made basically, that the clearance rate for crimes is at its lowest point in a long time. It's in the teens or 20s in some places, including for murder. Mississippi, not only now, but it's been this way for at least the 10 years we looked at, has a much lower violent crime rate than the national average and all of the states that are around us. We looked at 8 to 10 states. So we have a lower overall violent crime rate, but we have a much higher homicide rate. And the reason that can happen is because homicide is a relatively small portion of the overall number of violent crimes. And on that note, much of it is concentrated in the city of Jackson. We hear about murders here all the time. But according to FBI data, according to census data, Jackson has 6% of the population of the state. According to the FBI data, it has 52% of the murders in the state. So if the parole reform, which by the way, did not change the parole eligibility for murder, but if the increase was truly because of any of that, anything that was in that bill, then it would be shown to be more statewide and not so concentrated. 2 more quick points. It's easy to fall into the well-traveled ruts that we get in when we talk about crime, that either you want everybody to be in prison for as long as possible, or you don't want anybody in prison. These committees have moved away from that, and the legislature has moved away from those extremes. But it's still too easy to, especially in a campaign year, to say, well, I'm tough on crime, and if you disagree with me, then that means you're soft on crime. I think that's a dangerous thing to do, because this is public safety we're talking about. Public safety is a key proper role of government. And so we need to make sure we do it right. Last thing I'll mention is that it's, some people wonder if you can be a conservative and also for reducing prison population. has been a whole movement for a number of years now among conservatives that say that that the types of reforms that Mississippi has passed, that is the way to go. Attorney General for President Reagan, Ed Meese, Newt Gingrich, Americans for Tax Reform, former Governor Rick Perry from Texas, National Taxpayers Union. Some of those look at it as more of a fiscal issue. But in terms of public safety, they're in agreement as well that properly reducing, emphasis on properly reducing the prison population is not only wise, but it is better for taxpayers. It's good for the people who are in prison if they can be prepared before they get out of prison, much of what you've heard in the discussion today. But it's also good for the rest of us if they get out and if they are able to take a different path than the one that led them to prison to begin with. So all these are things that if we can, and Chairman Barnett has done a great job of this, of lowering the temperature on the debate so that we're not just accusing each other of being too tough or too soft on crime, that there are statistics that I hope you'll review. We also have some recommendations in there that I hope will be helpful to you. And I appreciate your time.
I know that we'll push for time, so if there's anyone in this committee that may have a question or two for Forrest or would like for him to be invited back at some further time to discuss more in depth the information he shared with us, we'll be glad to do that. But again, thank you for this valuable information that you have given to us. And again, thank you to all of you all who have attended this meeting today, both of you in the audience and to the members of this committee. I know that it's been long, and I thank you all for it, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank my committee assistant who's sitting over here out of the way of the cameras and everything else, but for also making this possible. So thank all of you all today. And with that, I get a motion? Thank you all.